Yeah, I mean, our relationship has grown to the point of having some of those type conversations. I think, for a while he wanted to be very successful in Cup, and there's a couple different ways that I think he's gone about defining that. And at some point, he probably wanted to sail off into the sunset and run sprint cars full time and compete for a championship there. But what's interesting is recently he's really leaned into the long and successful career in Cup. I'll let him define that a little bit more for you, but. He and I were talking the other day. He thinks 50 wins could be on the table. He thinks 60 is definitely the new number of a benchmark to get to. So that was actually fun to talk about and kind of have that in our mind. And I know that he thinks a lot of Tony Stewart, and Tony has the 3 championships. Of course, Gordon with 4. So it's hard to exactly define, but I know that he has those numbers and those guys on his radar.
Do you think the whole double experience impacted any of that?
From what aspect?
From the aspect of, okay, like, I'm supposed to be this greatest driver ever, and this just didn't go well, and I gotta go focus on kind of more or less my day job and just
maybe potentially. I don't know that he and I have talked about it where it's been declared quite that cut and dry. I think that experience was really good for him to see that he could go compete at a very high level. Even those cars, the results certainly weren't what he wanted or what anyone wanted, but can't ignore the fact that he put in the time and the prep, and especially year one had a very competitive overall experience and weekend. I think for him, it's, and I don't want to speak for him, but from what I've seen, he certainly is leaning into trying to maximize everything he can in the Cup Series, and in a way, he feels like he has a little bit of unfinished business, and I kind of do as well for our team of knowing how competitive we've been and certainly scored some wins. We feel like there's more wins to go get, and of course, neither of us is satisfied just having one championship. So I think that's what keeps him motivated, and certainly me and the team as well.
Cliff, in late May, you guys were off by your standards, and it took till the end of the summer sort of to get back to finding the speed it seemed like you were accustomed out of your own team. How small of margins are we talking about when it's the difference between, how you were earlier in the year and late May, and then now when you seem to have speed again? Like, how small are we talking, if we can try to relay that to the general public?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I were to put it on a 1 to 10 number scale of a change that we may have been off, 10 being monumental and 1 being not very much, you're probably talking a 3 or a 4 of little bits here and there, and it's hard to boil that down and quantify that as 1 or 2 things. There's a lot of different factors that goes into what those races were in June and July and even early August, different track types. Some of them were one-off events that in some ways are a way to take a 3 out of 10 different approach than where we had been, to try to either learn or explore, and certainly we wouldn't do it if we didn't think it was something that could help us get better. But at the end of the day, where I think we've come to realization is when you do make those changes and you don't improve, that can be as important of teaching you things that you need to do to get better than if you'd have found something that worked. So in those cases, we found a few things that didn't work, which I think is equally as valuable. And we certainly were strong at the beginning of the year, all the way up until the end of May, I would argue, because when the 600 got away from us, we were really strong that day and leading and even recovering from the first spin that we had. And then certainly when we got off in the summer, it wasn't until maybe early August, mid-August, that we could start to see, hey, okay, there's a trend here of some things that we had tried and a few things that didn't work on that 3 out of 10 number scale that I'm proud of our team and proud of Hendrick Motorsports that we were able to rectify a lot of that and show the resilience to kind of get it back on track.
Can you give a
lot was made, Cliff, about from the end of May, after the double, after Charlotte, of, well, the 5 team fell off. What's going on, right? Like, those of us on the outside talked a lot about it. I know Kyle admitted at one point, yeah, we're kind of in a slump. So I'm curious, 2 things. From a team perspective, did you all feel that way? How did you handle kind of everybody on the outside saying, what's wrong with the 5 team? And did you guys feel like you really were that off through the summer?
Yeah, something that I would say is an overarching story for our team this year, and I want to start by saying this. I am very, very proud of everyone on the 5, road crew, shop crew, pit crew, for the resilience that we've shown through the season. Someday I hope to get to tell the story of a lot of the details that we were experiencing at a personal level with individuals and a lot of different things on the 5 team, and even professionally, just how, we had the new pit crew coming in and a lot of, just what it takes to gel and kind of form together as a team. Our conversations when we were in the slump is that some of it was a little misleading. If you just looked at the finishing position, Mexico, we had a great qualifying effort. We had a really strong car, and we get taken out in the rain on lap 2. And I can think of a few other examples where our day just never really had a chance to materialize, and we were kind of playing from our heels. So I don't know that we ever felt nearly as weak as maybe what the storyline would suggest. But certainly we knew that we had ground to cover, and we were balancing a lot of challenges outside of racing, in addition to traveling. The fact that we weren't getting the finishes, and we were hemorrhaging some points and weren't where we needed to be. So again, I'm incredibly proud of the resilience of the team, the way everybody has bonded together. The culture of our team has never been stronger. Even Kyle himself, I think it's helped ground us all together in a way to bounce back, to be resilient, to show the toughness, to come into the stretch of the playoffs and still be strong.
So to that end, now as we look at here Saturday, Martinsville trying to advance to the championship race, do you feel like this team is back on level ground, or are you now further along than where you wanted to be? Like championship wise, where's this team now as we look at here we are when it matters?
Yeah, it's maybe a little bit tough to define, and maybe some of it we'll see, after the way the next 2 weeks go. But I would argue we are as strong or stronger now than we have ever been. And it's a very simple cliche statement, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And we've been through a lot of ups and downs this year. Again, on the racing side, and then just behind the scenes, where a lot of that has shown us our own weaknesses, which is great. And sometimes in life you need to be shown that so you can find ways to build back and show resilience and to be stronger, to have a little bit of grace and humility along the way, which we've certainly built into how we operate as a team, and even with the world around us, and in the sport, and within our team at Hendrick. I think there's been a lot of really good character building for us, and to me that's as important as any race win, to know that we have a team that's as strong as we are, ready to fight and compete together every week, no matter the result. And certainly we have high expectations for ourselves the next 2 weeks, but what's most important to me right now is how grounded we are, how connected we are, and we're certainly up for the challenge.
Can you provide a sense, obviously with Phoenix, some of the challenges in the past and what this organization has done to get better there, and just the pathway, and just look, I know the organization wants to get better at every track, but the effort that's gone into Phoenix over the last few years.
Yeah, it's every year we continue to have to up the bar, because credit to the guys at Penske, they've set such a standard at Phoenix for how they compete and win, and every year we thought we're bringing more to the table on the setup development side, on the car side, and yet every year we've continued to get beat. So in a way that's been a great challenge to push us in areas that we didn't expect. And to me, what I'm hopeful for, if I go back to the middle of the summer, we had a test at Gateway, can't remember if it was the end of June or early July, incredibly hot, slick day. It was a really tough test, just tough from the sense of trying to execute the test and understand changes of, the track conditions and that. It was a challenge for the team in a lot of ways, and what we were able to execute as a 5-team on the ground at the test, coupled with globally at Hendrick, the effort that a lot of different departments put into having us be prepared for that test, that put us on a new page, and we went to Loudon, certainly a lot more competitive than what we've been. We were very competitive at Gateway. The race strategy didn't quite work out for us, but I think those were the first competitive laps that we've led there as a 5-car in the next gen era, I think. And so that was a very new page for us to be on. So there's been a lot of optimism with what the construction of that looked like, and then with implementing it moving forward. And still, for the first time in the next gen era, we've been as far out of preparing for Phoenix as what we've been. I would argue 6 to 8 weeks out, where sometimes it's been 3 to 4 weeks out of Phoenix of really getting our mind wrapped around it. So we have a lot of optimism. certainly we're going to know in the next 8 days of what that looks like. But I'm really proud of our team and our company for what it took to make the Gateway test happen, to take that and run with it, and have good results at Gateway and Richmond and Loudon and places like that. And we're going to keep building on that to take us to Phoenix.
Who or what inspires you?
Who or what inspires me? Well, first and foremost, my relationship with the eternal. I'm a Christian, have a very strong belief in Jesus and what He has done for me, and for my life and for my family. I'm very inspired by my wife and my kids, and wanting to make them proud every day and to lead them the right way. I'm also very inspired by Hendrick Motorsports and the guys on the 5 team, because in my position, I'm very fortunate to be able to see people get challenged with a lot of different things in life, and still come to work every day grounded with a common purpose. And at the end of the day, everybody wants to work hard for themselves and their families, but they also want to do it for the greater good of the team and for the company. And so to be surrounded with people that are so common in that way of thinking, and that resilience and the passion for what we do, that inspires me every day. So I can't attribute it to one single person or thing. I'm just very fortunate to be surrounded by a great family and a great team and a great company to work for. There's a lot of inspiration in that.
Thank you.
Cliff,
Yep. Go ahead, Chloe.
thank you. Cliff, talking to Kyle, he was asking him about if he has to run with C-Bell, if he has to run with him and fight it out with him here, if he would prefer it was a teammate or a manufacturer teammate or not. And he brought up, gave a great answer, but then he brought up, if I have to move him, that's what I may have to do. And he brought that up himself. Have you thought about that? Have you guys had discussions about that? And, of course, we're talking at the end of it here at Martinsville, if it comes to that, and if it comes to those two.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of hypothetical situations that
Right.
you could play out, and we've had discussions really more of how do we plan our race
Yeah.
from this aspect of if we get a lot of stage points and Bell doesn't, if he does and we don't, or anywhere in between. So we've had a lot of those type conversations. At the end of the day, it's tough to get into the hypothetical of a late race restart, not knowing the situation. Do you move somebody or not? I think a lot of those things, Kyle is naturally going to do a really good job of handling on his own, in what he thinks he needs to do in the moment, depending on the situation that we're in. So we've had a lot of really constructive conversations around executing our day, and no matter how the day goes, what it would take to still put ourselves in position at the end. And I have all the confidence in the world that if we were in a hypothetical where it's on the line and you have to bring it home, that there's nobody better than Kyle to do it.
So obviously you're very strategic, right? And you can't tell him what to do because there's probably 50 different options, and he can't think through all the potentials, right? How do you not let that work in your head as the crew chief that you are and say, well, okay, we've talked about all this now, at the moment you have to decide? Is that how it works?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no, and I would argue that there's the strategic side, and then there's the tactical side. And the strategic side, we've talked through a lot of those things, and on the tactical side, there's a reason that Kyle Larson is as good as he is, and he races 90 times a year, so tactically he learns how to be upfront on late race restarts, whether it's on dirt or pavement or anywhere in between. And that's what makes him special. So I'm hopeful we have our ground covered on the strategic and the tactical side, and a lot of confidence in the prep work that we've done to get to this point. Now we just got to see it through.
Thank you.
When you look, go ahead, I'm sorry, Doug. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. When you talked about Kyle's attitude changing about focusing more on Cup now instead of going off in the sprint car, how have you seen his race preparation change? For instance, Denny Hamlin spent 7.5 hours in the sim before Vegas. So is Kyle around the shop more? How have you seen his race preparation change since he's decided to focus more on this and change his objective?
I don't know that because of his mindset of wanting to be more involved in Cup long term, that is a direct translation to what I'm about to say. At the middle of the summer, we weren't, where we felt like we wanted to be, and so we had some conversations around what it would take to be a little more connected on a Monday post-race and be a little more connected on a Thursday and Friday pre-event for the next week. That's something that we kind of did on our own that I would say is not a true connection to what he's thinking about long-term. So that is something that we've implemented and has been really effective for us. But at the end of the day, I think, this whole time, he's always been focused on the job at hand, and even when his schedule is busy in the summertime and he's racing a lot of different tracks all across the country, there's nobody better than him at what it takes to manage the focus and the prep for each of those races, each of those events. He's always done a great job with it, and I don't know that there's any correlation to when his schedule is busy in the summer that we aren't great. I think that's just kind of how our summer went. So no matter what, we're very well connected now on Mondays and Thursdays and Fridays leading into a weekend, and we'll continue that now and moving forward.
Thank you.
As great as your team is year to year and everything, what your season has been, is this season defined as a success if you guys make or don't make the championship four?
I think that's going to be more, for you guys to write about on however you want to see the result. But for us as a team, I would say this is one of the most accomplished seasons that we've had of handling adversity both on and off the track. What it's taken to build a team and build a culture around the resilience, the grace, the humility of handling challenges, handling issues, having purpose, focusing on being a good team first, and knowing that if we check those boxes that the results will take care of themselves. Unfortunately, I feel like the last handful of weeks we've been putting ourselves in a lot of good positions, and we haven't quite had the ultimate result that we want. But there's still 2 races left. There's still a lot of time to go get that. So for me personally, I think this has been a very successful season for the 5 team, both on and off the track. And that's what I'm really proud of, for our group, the way that we've stuck together, overcome those challenges, and built a really good culture and really high character within the team of how we operate.
We've heard a lot from drivers this year about their preferred playoff formats, and we know likely that the playoff format's going to change. As a crew chief, what would you like to see?
It's really tough when you deal with the hypotheticals of what this format can provide for us of just the one race, championship race, and the way the rounds go, because I do think there's a lot of merit that should be rewarded in having a very consistent regular season. I just think of the 17, a lot of top 10s throughout the season, top 10 in points, really strong regular season, doesn't make the playoffs. That is tough to see, even from the outside, and then also knowing that could be us one day. So something that is going to be built to rewarding more consistency, more longevity, being up front more often, and not just having to have this punchline of win and you're in, of someone who may not have had as consistent of a season. That's what I would like to see different. I know there's a lot of hypothetical structures and things out there. My focus isn't on that right now for Martinsville this weekend. But generally speaking, I think there is something to rewarding the merit of consistency throughout the year.
Quick follow-up real quick.
Yep.
Pro playoff, it sounds like that?
To be honest with you, my focus has been so much on this week and next week and what it's going to take to execute that I haven't sat down and drawn on the whiteboard the pros and cons of either.
Gotcha.
Hypothetical for Martinsville, caution comes out late in the stage, everybody's going to hit, flip the stage, do you have to stay up for points?
We've looked at that from both different angles of what would it look like to do that and what would it look like not to do that. And, ultimately I think there's a scenario where us and Bell would probably end up being very similar to each other in what that could look like, unless there is some big disparity in our running positions. And I think that'll almost dictate it in the moment. If we're really close on track, we may end up matching each other, and then if we're not, then either of us could end up doing something different. So we've looked at it both ways, and ultimately we've got to make the right decision in the moment.
Cliff, the top 8 cars were all from the 3 major biggest organizations. This car, when it started out, it seemed like it was a lot more wide open, and then people seemed to hone their setups, and there was concept shared as people went between teams. So now it's, sort of gravitated toward the top organizations with the most resources, having the best. Where does this car go from here in terms of, I assume it's just going to get closer and closer, and the concepts are going to be similar. So what do you think we'll see in the next couple of years if nothing changes big time with the car?
I think twofold with that. By the end of the old car, the Gen 6 car, you still had you know, the bigger teams kind of at the top of what that was. And the reason for that is the obvious, you know, with resource and all the detail that goes into honing the setups and honing the cars. Now that we're, you know, enough length of the runway into the time of this new car, that the big teams have had more of an opportunity to do that and continue to refine what we have. The other thing that I'll say is it really seems like, you know, there is some interest and some push to mix things up. We already know going into next year with the horsepower, maybe that's step one of two of getting more horsepower. Kyle would hope that we could look at even more than 750 one day in the future, plus a few other things that I've heard of that are on the table. So it's hard to see 3 years from now through the lens of right now, knowing that there's already changes coming and that could mix it up some more. But what has brought us to this point where we have the bigger teams being up front isn't a whole lot different than the same reason they were, you know, with the old car. And change is always good for our sport. How we go about it, you know, I would say we can look at the principles and the things that have stood through the test of time of our sport and the identity of our sport and what makes us who we are, that I would argue we could take a little bit of time to look at that and make sure we get that right moving forward. But change is always a good thing, and we're certainly gonna have to react to whatever that is, you know, going into next year and then hopefully in the future.
Going into tomorrow, even though it may not happen, do you have to approach that with the mindset that one of those 4 cars on the bottom is going to win?
Yeah, we've looked at it from a lot of different angles, and certainly our goal is to execute a good enough day that we can take care of our own circumstance without relying on whatever may happen with you know, the others around us. And certainly that's one of those scenarios that we have to look at, that if a car below the cut line wins, have we done enough to get through? I think the way the race could play out could present a lot of different circumstances for that, and it's going to be our job to cover those and execute in the moment.
You mentioned this a little bit earlier in terms of just how connected the 5 team is right now and the way that you guys have overcome adversity. How different is the 5 team now or leaving 2025 as opposed to how you entered the season?
Vastly different, you know, just in terms of our roster, you know, teammates that are on the shop crew, road crew, pit crew. We've got some different individuals than what we started the season with, a lot of different reasons, you know, one way or the other for that. But at the end of the day, there's always been a unifying culture with us of how we want to operate, hold ourselves to a high standard, you know, kind of the growth mindset of pushing to always be better. It is interesting when you get, and I think this is healthy, when you get the opportunity to have, you know, new teammates, fresh perspective. It does push us to evolve in ways and to continue to push ourselves to get better, that I think is great. I sometimes get rigid in our structure and our process of knowing that it's been built for a reason and it's been successful, and then now more than ever after seeing the way this year has played out for us, I don't want to be quite so rigid in things that we do and be able to take in fresh perspective and new ways to just improve, be more efficient, even mix it up with team dynamics and fun things that we do, all the way down to the gritty details of how we execute and build a race car. So it's been, when I look at it now, it's been very challenging, but it's also been very fun to see it holistically as we've moved along. Some individual situations weren't fun at the time, but with the growth mindset, there's always ways to improve. There's always things to learn, and that's been on our mind really for the whole season.
How hard
What's
is it
been
to
the
change your?
evolution of Kyle Larson since he came under your wing, Cliff?
You know, I didn't get to spend a lot of time with him in the Ganassi days at all, so it's hard for me to know what the daily routine looked like for his team and his process and the way all that was. Obviously, our entire world, the way it operated, was a lot different in 2021, still kind of mid-COVID. So even what I remember of the Gen 6 car and the way we operated as a sport pre-COVID was way different in 2021 and beyond. So I don't know that I can really speak to all of that of him before, but what I know now is, you know, since we've been together, he's always been very focused. He has a genuine passion for racing, which is what keeps him racing 90 times a year. And he's always wanting to learn and be better and be a student of the game. I think he does that really well. So we certainly enjoy our relationship together. I think he's great as a teammate for our team to push us to continue to push the envelope and bring fast cars to the racetrack. So we're certainly thankful for the relationship that we have with him and the way he pushes us to be better.
And you talked about trying to get maybe a little more relaxed environment. Going back to your driving days, and I talked to Drew Herring last weekend. You've raced against Drew Herring, against Denny Hamlin behind the wheel. You know that perspective. Has that helped you at all when you're making decisions on the box?
I definitely think it does, and you know, everyone's story is unique, and my story certainly has impacted, you know, the way that I operate and lead in the position that I'm in. Even here, I was thinking about it on the drive up here. I think my first time here was when my dad raced here, late 80s, early 90s, for the big Martinsville late model race, the Taco Bell 300 is what it used to be called. I spent so much time here as a kid that was always very special to me, and then getting to race here and run that race and finish well on that race, it comes full circle now to be in this position, and knowing the job that we have to do this weekend, the way I need to coach and lead the team, coach and lead Kyle. I think all those aspects of the story play in and have an impact, and hopefully it works out for us this weekend.
As a leader, how difficult is it to evolve? I mean, you talked about in your answer to Zach about how, you know, you had this structure, and the thing about your structure is you knew that worked for you and you knew it was successful. And so when you as yourself have to take a step back and go, wait a minute, I might have to be open to doing things a different way. That's got to be, you know, you don't know whether that's going to be successful or not when you're taking that approach. So how difficult is that to get yourself there in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think first I try to continue to let myself get influenced. There's a lot of books I've been reading this year in the last handful of years on different approaches to exactly what you're talking about with leadership and how you must evolve. And part of that evolution could be purely strategic, some of it's tactical, some of it's just the style of how you build your culture. This year in particular has been very challenging across all fronts, but at the same time, I've been reading some really good material that kind of coaches the leadership mindset of it, where, you know, it does boil down to how organized we are, how well we communicate. You know, themes like that have to stay consistent no matter what your day in, day out process must look like. And there's always going to be times where you can evaluate yourself and find more areas to improve than others. And then you also have to be very careful when you feel like that evaluation says, hey, we're doing the right things. It is now an okay time just to see the implementation of that, you know, kind of blossom and come to light. That's always the tough position of leadership, of knowing how to stay the course and then when to change the course. So it's a great question that you ask, and there's not ever a right or wrong answer. Part of it's just life and learning, and as fate would have it, I'm reading the book The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday right now. Not The Obstacle is in the Way, but The Obstacle is the Way. So that's been very relatable for our season this year. In a lot of different ways. So there's always an opportunity to learn, always an opportunity to grow. That's been at the front of our mind. But very, at the end of the day, very fortunate to have a great group of guys that are resilient and humble and hungry to go do the job, and we've just got to put it all together.
A lot of times, you know, we think of crew chiefs as being so busy, and you guys are insanely busy. But Jonathan Hassler said this week that he was reading all kinds of books. And is this a new thing for crew chiefs? Have you always read like that? Because I thought after Jonathan Hassler was talking about it, that when does he find time to read these days?
Well, he probably has to fit it in with no time to spare, much like I do. Yeah, and we actually, I'll tell this story someday. We read 3 books together as a 5-team over the course of this summer.
Wow.
Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. We read The Art of War by Sun Tzu, and we read Acres of Diamonds by Russell Conwell. Did that collectively as a team, shop crew, road crew, pit crew, Kyle, Tyler, our spotter, everyone all in, and that was a lot of fun to do. And so what brings that about? I mean, I think just the evolution of our sport. We are so compartmentalized when we're here at the track. You know, you unload to impound, you can't touch your car. You know, you get these 30-minute bursts of time where you have to communicate and execute. Cup racing days of old, you know, especially when I first came into the sport, the garage opened at 7 a.m. every day and it closed at 6 or 7 p.m. every night. You had nothing but time to work on your car and do a lot of things where maybe you could overcome deficiencies quicker, where now it is just very short bursts of momentary execution. And there's a lot of these principles that I think, sounds like Hassler is seeking out, and I have continued to seek out, and many others, of what fundamental, I would say, building blocks do you have to have within your team to execute those things very quickly. And a little misstep in communication can be so impactful in the format of how we have to race now, where we don't get a lot of practice time, we don't get a lot of time, even together here with our car at the track, even though we're going to be here for whatever it is, 8 hours today. We just don't get a lot of time with our car. We get, our brief window of practice, we get our brief window of adjustments, our brief window of qualifying adjustments. You have to be ready to make decisions and to implement and to execute in a hurry. And so that's where the culture and the chemistry of the team are so important. I think that potentially is why you see more of that, endeavor now for crew chiefs. But at the same time, think about what you know of Ray Evernham and of Chad Knaus and a lot of the greats days of old. They were always students of the game of leadership and team building. And certainly I'm part of the lineage and have had the good fortune of working for great guys like Chad and even Alan. Alan's still living it out today. He's been a staple in the Cup Garage for a long time. And even what Alan does to grow his team and lead his team is unique. And they see now kind of what I'm describing of how you have to execute on these these short burst moments throughout a weekend. So it's certainly a leadership challenge, and it makes it a lot of fun.
All right, thank you guys. Sorry, garage is opening. So.
Oh, cool.
I gotta look up.